to try to. Well, you kind of have started with one of the things I was curious about is, you know, is COVID and the impact that that's had on your ministry and how you've adapted to that.
You know, you probably, you know, when DeVoe comes, he probably, because he's been on the tech end of stuff, but I can give you the story.
That would be great.
Yeah. You know, as I said, you know, we were, I think, 2 weeks in, and this has been since March. I want to say mid-March, I think, when we started to do what we were doing, I think. And he can really provide some, a better timeline. But like I said, I would do an upload in the beginning of the week. And then on the actual Sunday, I would also upload and would tape it. And then that would be played, I think, on Sunday. And it really has affected us. Even just before then, we had some people who were not able to worship with us because of having to move. A couple of our elderly had to move from where they were. And this was sort of like, it's got nothing to do with COVID, but went to a nursing home. And so we kind of lost that individual because they were at a nursing home. And she did not have a tablet. And so, you know, we basically connected and still connect with that particular individual by her calling in for a Bible study on Saturday morning at 10. So that particular individual, we really didn't connect in terms of worship. But the other people, because they did have access to internet, those persons could go to YouTube and they could see something that we've taped earlier. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And then maybe about 4 weeks ago or so, we began to do this parking lot experience. And then we began to stream so that, you know, other people can actually on time, you know, on the Sunday morning, be able to participate.
Yes.
And because we could broadcast to 87.9,
right,
you came because that nobody has taken that. You know, that was just kind of a miracle for us. But they just turned to 87.9, and we found that within a mile radius, people could get that signal.
That's great.
So, so right here, everybody who's within a mile radius or even further out. I remember one day when I was driving up, I turned to 87.9 just to see when the signal would hit. And it was even beyond a mile, so that anybody who was on 87.9, they could begin to participate. But obviously, the closer you are to the broadcast, it was a more powerful signal.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's been a gift so that people could come sit in the parking lot like you experience and be able to hear what's going on inside the building.
Yes.
So that's kind of what we've been doing.
And I actually I had my phone with me, so I listened on the radio, but streamed on the phone so that I could see you during the service as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the challenge really, I think in that was because, you know, there are some people who didn't have the technology.
Yes, exactly.
And as you well know, maybe you had an opportunity to talk to DeVoe about the ministry that we've had with immigrants and with refugees. You know, our immigrants, really, they're coming from several places, and a number of them who have been in this country for a while. We've got some people from Liberia. We have some people from Zimbabwe. The former minister of this congregation was from Tanzania. We've got some people, a number of the Kikuyu tribe from Kenya, who have been a part of this ministry for maybe 3 or 4 years. But then the people who have been not just immigrants, but refugees, we had people from Uganda and from the Congo. And in those cases, a number of them maybe don't have the internet access.
Right.
And so that has meant that, since we've gone to even well, except for one family from the Congo, I think in that case, they have not been attending the service in the parking lot.
Okay.
So what has basically happened is that through my connection with them on a regular basis, we've maintained contact and connection with those families.
Yeah.
And we used to have, do you know Sister Barbara Collins, who is a deaconess or who is now a deacon, I guess they call them?
I have heard her name, but I have not met her.
Okay. Well, she actually, her husband and she used to serve as missionaries in Kenya. And therefore they spoke a certain kind of Swahili.
Ah,
And they were worshiping here for a period. And then the bishop placed her as a deacon to serve at Bethany on the south side.
okay.
Bethany Lutheran Church on the south side. So she did a stint there, I want to say, maybe about 7 months or so. And periodically, both she and Malcolm, her husband, he was really the missionary, and together they were doing the mission work, obviously.
Right.
But he was doing some work of producing a translation of the New Testament for people in that area in Kenya. But in any event, they would periodically come together. But basically, when she really began not full time, but an interim at Bethany, we didn't see them that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hearing DeVoe, he's here,
Okay.
so we're going to hook up in a minute. So anyway, but we have that number of people who have come from the Congo, and they don't have the technology for
Right.
it. So we've been maintaining connection in other ways. And Sister Collins was very helpful because she can speak Swahili. That
Yes.
also meant that in terms of what we call social ministry, she was able to connect with them on a regular basis. I would be called in on various situations, and especially in terms of financial resources and medical resources that would come up, and with the FSSA and what have you. So I kind of served as the identified responsible person, and so
Yeah.
we connect often.
He's waving through the window at us. So, DeVoe.
Okay, so he's here then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been one of the struggles, I think, with this situation. When people don't have the technology, it's difficult to include them in on some parts of that. And I had a number of sometimes I call them brain starts or brain farts about some ways to connect and really to try to bring people together.
Yes.
In space. But because of people's working schedules, that has been a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
Because there's a particular section of town where at least 3 families that I can think of live. And so I thought, well, maybe if we can bring that, because they don't have or at least one does, but the others don't have the internet connection, maybe we can bring that group of people together, and there'd be something that we could do, some kind of community connection through that. And we're not able to pull that off because of people's work schedules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. At Synod Council this weekend, they were talking about just the technology barrier. And I come from a school background. I taught in Pike for 12 years.
Oh, really?
And,
okay. High school, middle school?
No, elementary school librarian.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And it was the same thing, when we started talking about one-to-one, there were just students that weren't going to have the connections. Now, fortunately,
Yes.
with the grant that came through this summer for technology, we were
Okay.
able to provide some hotspots to families.
Yes.
And so now, during times when we have to be remote, the kids are able to connect. But
Right, right. I have a daughter that lives in Pike, and she has had three of my grandchildren, and they were in Pike, and just at the end of March or beginning of April or whatever, they were able to connect in whatever ways that were possible because they had internet already.
yes,
But then we had one of my grandchildren who was just starting school this year. So she had not experienced all of this. And just imagine a person going to the school for the first
I
time.
know. Well, I don't
And
have to imagine because I have friends who, are trying to teach kindergartners who'd never touched a computer before.
exactly.
They don't know what, they don't know what the A looks like, let alone how to find it on a keyboard. So,
Right, right. But really, but that little one, her name is Madison, and Madison, she has been on a tablet so many times.
mhm,
She really is familiar, with some of that.
yes,
It wasn't a total new experience for her. So, but it was just different having a person on the other end and actually
right,
asking you questions and things of that
yes,
sort. And I'm not sure if they were seeing each other, other kids in the class, or they were seeing each other or whatever. But I would sometimes ask a question. I said, "How many students do you have in your class? Do you know anybody's name now?" And things of that sort. So she would kind of clue me in on what she understood.
yes,
And now she's actually is going to school about, I think, 2 days a week. I
okay,
think it's on Thursday and Friday she goes in. So she does that. On the other days, she's at home.
okay,
So she's doing a hybrid, right now.
yeah,
And she seems to be making it through. And that's been a good situation for the mom because, she had, well, the one of the children is now, she's in college. So she's in Kentucky. She's going to Kentucky State. So that's the older one. But then we still have three people in the house. My daughter has a guest who's living with them, and she is a high school student who's a
mhm.
junior. So there he is. So
Devo, that is, well, he was in
three
the
of them.
waiting room. I didn't see him. And we were wondering when you were going to join us, and you were right there.
Right.
So we were just talking a little bit about technology and how it's wonderful, but how not everybody has access, and some of the things that Salem Shalom has done to try
Right.
to reach some of those.
As well as
Families.
being fragmented, I think also in what their universe is, because some people are on Facebook, some people aren't. Some people are on the app. A lot of the Africans are on WhatsApp, and which is more phone based, which the church doesn't have a cell phone per se, so that makes it harder to
Yeah.
get connected that way. Then some people have it, and some people don't even have internet. Right.
Right.
But if you do have WhatsApp on your cell phone, you can also have WhatsApp on your computer.
Right.
So, in fact, when Beth was in, she and I were working with that. So now I have WhatsApp on my laptop.
Right. But it's on your account.
That's correct. Right.
So the church doesn't have a cell phone to start.
Got it. Yeah.
And actually, when Sister Barbara was here, we did buy a cell phone. So we do have the phone sitting in here, but it's just not activated right now.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Susie.
Tell me a little bit about how the Shalom ministry and Salem's traditional ministry have merged and worked together.
Well, DeVoe, why don't you start, because you know the story about how Salem Shalom came together and all the rest of that story.
And Devo, I told Pastor Capers, but I'm recording today, just so
Okay.
you know.
Well, the part where Shalom came about is because we had an African national who had a background in ministry, and knocked on our door. And the story goes that well, he was living in the Quad Cities, but he had friends in Dayton, Ohio, and so he would come through Indianapolis, and he felt God was calling him to Indianapolis, and he did several web searches, browser searches for churches, and no matter what he put in, Salem came up. And so he ended up knocking on the door, and basically we welcomed him, and then he had started recruiting people, and again, people he would see in the produce section at the grocery store or wherever he was, if they had, if it appeared to be have an African connection, that he made the made the invite. And so that developed. Being of a more Pentecostal background, what they like to do is have large, long weekend services that would go late into the night, where people from Dayton and the region would all come together to celebrate the Lord. And that was not, there was some friction there as far as, our little neighborhood is not exactly conducive to having a late night noise. Yeah. And so Pastor Nancy was involved then, and then since we had the connections, she had somebody in mind in Minneapolis, and in the Minister Maury, and the council was open to having him come and set up to shepherd both Salem and to be at the same time developer of Shalom. And then my understanding is the African population has always wanted to be a part of our church, but at the same time we were offering ministries that were specific to their needs too, and which included some bilingual. Pastor or Minister Maury would usually do a bilingual sermon where he wouldn't translate everything, but he would go back and forth, and including having a PowerPoint usually for his sermons that would have both languages up. And so does that explain how it got started, I believe? Or
Yeah, and I've read some of the history about the beginning, and you gave me a little bit of history when I visited a week ago yesterday. And in terms of the two groups working together now, are there any challenges with that? Is that working well?
Well, I guess I've been here, I guess 3 years, a little bit 3 years plus now. And I guess when I came and I saw the various groups, as I said, both the fact that we have other immigrants from other African nations, and in many ways, those who were fluent in English, it was a little bit easier to see them involved in the ministry, the total ministry, so that, to be honest, Shalom, as I saw it, was not so separate, but Shalom really was also a part of Salem. So it wasn't so separate that it could be, where you
a
actually,
gray area, mostly in the gray area, probably.
Yeah, the gray area.
Between,
and I think probably financially, probably on the books, there were ways in which they could receive some dollars in order to do specific things related to African national ministry. But on the whole, it was kind of a joint thing. So when I came, I noticed, there was no separate council, for instance, of people who were going to be directing what was called Shalom. But Salem had a council and tried to include some people from African descent on that council. And then we would, I guess the whole council would direct both the English speaking and the other ministry as well.
And there was never a separate role. When Minister Maury received new members, they came into the Salem roles.
Right, right.
Right. So really the model I saw here when I came, the model seemed to be that there's really one congregation, a number of expressions, and a number of opportunities to reach out into the general African descent community. And because of Minister Maury and his talents and gifts, I mean, I understand he spoke about 5 languages, but he was able to speak Swahili in such a way that he could communicate across the board with a number of people from African descent for those who also spoke Swahili. And I think that's what his focus of attention was, even so much so if you talk to Pastor Nancy, and I'm sure DeVoe can give some information on this. There was a particular Sunday where this congregation, I think, received about maybe 33 people who were of African descent and who were coming in generally, I think, from the Congo. Is that true, DeVoe? Did they basically come from Uganda?
It's for Rwanda, only because a lot of the people from the Congo were in a refugee camp in Rwanda.
Right.
And then there was other folks. There's one family who were from Rwanda, escaped to someplace else, came back to. It was sometime a fluid situation where, over the years they were back and forth a couple of times, and so they a lot of them had and a lot of them then wherever they were absorbed some of those cultures so that they were multicultural in the way their life turned out. Yeah.
Yeah. So those people really became a part of Salem. Now, one of the things that Salem did provide, I mean, was providing some sense of cultural cohesion from the standpoint of being connected with these various Swahili speaking, having gone through some kind of dynamic in their home countries, and then going through the camps and being here. So they found that connection. And the fact too that Salem also provided some social ministry issues like some clothing and foodstuffs and things of that sort.
And Minister Maury was a translator many times for legal documents and
yes,
bridging the cultural gap there, is of which Sister Barbara continued providing some of those services to helping them with the bureaucracy.
Right, yeah. I mean, and so in that sense, really, Minister Maury's work in terms of how he was doing witness, he really talked about being witness, so that he was with people in the midst of the various challenges and changes they were going through from having come from those countries in the situations they were in and then coming to this country. So he was
his remarks explaining that to the Synod Assembly are on our Shalom page on our website.
Yes, and I have read that.
Okay. So,
but it's different hearing it from you. That I think that's where the story piece comes in. It's one thing to see it printed, and it's another thing to really hear. Now, do you have somebody now who's able to do some of that translation work?
Well, really, like I said, since I've been here with the 3 years, what I've tried to do is find ways of having done that with a Minister Maury not present.
Right.
What we have had is a couple of people who were from Kenya. And, and I guess one of the things that I really have learned is just because you speak Swahili doesn't mean you speak Swahili.
Yes.
In other words, you can be having a Swahili that you're speaking in Kenya, but it's not the same one that you speak when you're coming from the Congo or from Uganda, Rwanda, or whatever. So, but I've had assisting me a couple of people who were of the Kikuyu tribe and who came from Kenya, so that we were doing sometimes moment by moment translation within worship, or sometimes with one person, I would actually produce a whole message And so I ended up producing two messages, one that I used for the English speaking people. Then I produced another one that was for Swahili hearing. And so I sent that to the brother, and then he would then translate it into Swahili that he spoke to everybody. And then with the other sister who was from Kenya, it was, for her, it was better moment by moment. So then I would try to communicate in such a way that she could also translate, and we would do it that way. Now, as far as social ministry, I guess one of the things I learned was, in general, there was really a need for heart translation of things that were going on. So it turns out that in one particular family, there was an individual who knew English enough so I could represent the family, and then she would translate to the head of the household what was needed or what they were going through. So that worked out pretty well. And then on the other part of that, Sister Barbara Collins was with us so that she could fully represent, I wasn't needed in that case, she would fully represent that particular family. And she would represent them with the various systems that existed. And of course, do you know about Exodus? Do you know about Exodus at all?
I'm not familiar.
Well, that's a group that really does placement of refugees or immigrants, and it's called Exodus. And there's a person who was a caseworker that happened to work with both of the families that we had here. And she was very helpful. And she would make sure that there were some resources that were made available to at least these two families that I can think of at the moment, who actually had remained here. That 33 that I talked about earlier, by and large, they are not here. I have made some connection with them, but they haven't been long connections, so that they would continue on here at Salem. So, and in some cases, I think they went along with the guy who, the original guy who came from a Pentecostal bent. I think they went along with him, and he and I have had a number of conversations, and he talked about, no man, they're not here. So anyway, so it's been interesting experience and road here.
Because he has an active ministry, sharing a church that's on Michigan Road near 56th, across from the Walmart down there. Yeah,
You're right. You mean Baptist Church, right?
That's the facility that they use in the afternoon. Yeah.
At the Baptist facility. Yeah, there in Michigan.
Okay.
Now,
Well,
you talked about the groups. If there's a difference between the groups, it's more of the age difference. Whereas the refugees and the immigrants are more of the.
They are young.
For the most part, be under 40.
Yeah.
The Salem people are more of the plus 60. And so a struggle of trying to find new leaders is where the younger folks are too busy and the older folks are too tired.
Yeah. And that's true, really. But really, to a certain extent, I guess the more that I'm getting inside the lives of the refugees, but I'm not sure it makes a difference, because I'm now certainly connected with the immigrants in general. There is a cultural philosophy and way of doing that is totally different from being an American. And I guess from a person that also has grown up in the African-American experience in America, I can tell that. And so I can see how, leadership comes up, how it's developed, and there are differences. And also in terms of the emphasis and what is important, those things are different as well. And I think I could, an example would be the ways in which the males in the household and their role in the household is honored and lifted up is different from what we have experienced in America. And it is also different in terms of, well, basically immigrants in general. And so, one really needs to understand that to see how the model that may be here at Salem that was here before may not match that. And so in terms of development and leadership development, those things are really before us, I think, in general. So
one of the things that I noticed is that, and this may not be true as much during COVID, but that you rotate your worship services between the Red Hymnal and With One Voice and Chicago Service of Hope, and then like if there's a fifth Sunday, that there's some kind of an African service. Is that still the case, or is that older information?
Well, actually, that's really has been over. I think, except that I think you were here that Sunday. It was the fifth Sunday in August. Is that true? Were you here on the fifth Sunday?
No, I was here. I was here on the 6th.
Oh, on the first
A week
Sunday of
ago on
September.
First Sunday.
Okay.
But with that, when we stopped having a musical liturgy, then
Then it didn't. Yeah, if you're doing service of the word, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah. Well, here, we use With One Voice,
Yes.
one of the liturgies out of there, and we also use the Raspberry. So
Right.
one or two services out of there. And on the fifth Sunday, what I did was I sort of like fashioned a Lutheran experience that had the gathering, the word, the meal, and the sending. But how we did that was not in the same way that's in the With One Voice and also in the ELW. But it included some singing of choruses and or songs as a part of the gathering, and the word would be read in the same ways, maybe the three lessons. The meal would be the words of institution, and then we would send people with some sort of a piece there. So that we did what was gathering word meal sending, but in another kind of way. That did not necessarily include a call response kind of experience where people knew the words here or whatever, but we kind of did I'd say a hybrid, I guess, of what those four parts of the liturgy are, and experience that. And really, I tried to do on the fifth Sunday, even though this happened every Sunday, we have a youth choir. And the choir has been a major part of trying to bring to the whole congregation other musical experiences to worship, including those that are from African descent, and also in terms of praise and worship from other contemporary forms and methodology. So all of those were included in our worship on an ongoing basis, but on the fifth Sunday, we try to emphasize it.
And a reason that we've had that rich variety of musical worship is because Salem has had a history of having rich resources in terms of music. A large part of our choirs have been members of the symphony, and so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's right, and I forgot we used the Chicago Folk Mass
Service.
I think,
Yes.
on the third Sunday during a certain period of the year, because we had persons that could
The
do it.
accompanist, go to Arizona
They
during
go to Arizona, right? So yeah.
Yeah. We, and so the refugees and the immigrants probably had all different kinds of worship experiences before they were here.
Yeah.
Devo spoke to me a little bit about some of the differences in some of the sacraments. For instance, baptism. He said baptism is sometimes
Yes,
handled
right.
differently according
And let me speak to this, because this really certainly has something to do with now and also into the future. Number one, it's really wherever these first persons are coming from, a lot depends on who did the missionization. So in other words, if it was Presbyterians that missionized the people, that's generally how they came. So that is to say that, you know, I've got one Kenyan who is, her background is Presbyterian. So she has a sense of how things are done, because whatever it is that was the European or the American experience, they superimpose that on Africans. So that's how
Yeah.
they act. And then there's another person who is Anglican. And so in the same way that those things were superimposed on the Africans, and that's how they came here. And then there's another individual who is Roman Catholic. And so that was imposed, and then he came with that kind of understanding. But I think in general, the way in which a number of these Africans came here, they sort of like said, well, we're in America, we're going to do what America does. And for their limited experience, only what is done is what's done in this Lutheran church. So they basically received that and accepted that. Now, what I think the challenge is now that, and what I also found is that the more I get into this kind of conversation about worship and worship style, I'm finding that many of them had other religious experiences outside of the Presbyterian and outside of the Baptist or outside of the Roman Catholic experience, but they sort of left that and decided not even to think about using that within this context.
Huh.
So that it's really, you know, I've done some analysis of this information, and what I'm thinking about is that many times what is suggested for immigrants is what I might call an assimilationist point of view. So that is to say that no matter what it is that you were, let me tell you what it is to be Lutheran. And so I don't want you to assimilate to that. And I think in general, people are so thankful. Immigrants are so thankful of being in this context and so forth that they don't want to rock that boat. They really want to say, okay, we will assimilate to what it is that you say, what it is to be Lutheran. And so now then be able to say to them, no, there are gifts that you also have to give us. And it's not just simply in your hymnody. It is also in terms of your style and what have you. And that is, I think for the younger ones, they probably can speak to that more than anything, because as I have spoken to them, to the younger ones, they say, oh yeah, we used to sing blah, blah, blah. I said, you did? So with the youth choir, we've have included some of that stuff within our worship through the choir. And so the whole experience has benefited from that as well. And also the fact that some of this stuff is really in our ELW and has not been grabbed onto. So I tried to bring that to the fore and try to show that, you know, there's, by the way, there are some connections. Maybe you didn't know about it, but here it is. So that's I guess that's one of the things that I think right now for the future though, after COVID, post-COVID,
Yes.
another question here. And I think as an interim pastor, I don't think I've done my duty unless I've done this. And that is to say that now there's the possibility of us building a larger audience because of COVID, because of streaming.
Yes.
What ought we begin to do now that's going to reach out to the larger population, so that if people begin to think, you know something, when things open up, I think I'm going to go by and so forth, go by there, because I can see what their experiences is online or streaming.
Right.
And I want to experience that. So I'm trying to raise that question now, because I think that's going to be for the future for all churches.
I agree.
Is that
Yeah.
this streaming really has an idea, an opportunity to reach larger populations, so that, in my words, the evangelization is more possible now than it ever has been, because you really have been thrown outside of the four walls and you're now really in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And if that's true, then it means that we got to think about various things and ask the question, how do we reach that general population now?
So is there a moment in this ministry that kind of stands out for you as being special?
Yeah, DeVoe?
Yeah. There always seems to be moments that sort of bring out, a hint of some of the stories that are there that we haven't explored. One of the young men that was there at the service, Kalamo, I was giving the children a ride to church one Sunday, and then they had recruited another family from Zambia that had just moved in down the street, and that's one way that we've gotten people, because they're very old, they can sense when somebody new is coming in and needs help. In fact, an example of this the family is that nobody had shown them the thermostat, and this was December. And so they were piling on the blankets because they didn't know how to turn up the heat. So there's some basic needs there that were being served. But the two boys were talking to each other in English and comparing their school experiences about some of the good and bad things. The boys like to talk about the pranks that they would play on other students or the teacher. And they didn't know we had a prank day, which I told them April 1st we did. Although I didn't want to push it, because that year, April 1st was a Sunday, so I don't want to. And so there's certain gems like that come through. The Christian radio station, K-Love, is often on the radio, and there was a mother and two children who didn't speak any of the languages that anybody else spoke, so they were having a difficult time. And but they also had some cousins who were living in the same neighborhood, and the first English words I heard her speak were klove.com for what she had picked up on the radio.
Oh, wow.
And then Christina from the Faraha family, I had a CD playing that Minister Morey had left in the church van that was instrumental, but it was playing the font of all, font of blessings. Anyway, singing in Swahili, Christina started singing along to, and so that was another moment. So those things come up that really make you smile and tell you that there's some stories there that should be shared. Yeah, because I don't think we've ever really explored what these people experienced before the refugee camps and during the refugee camps.
Yeah, because really it is true that, as I said, many of these missionization experiences, they do have in their memory. And if they were to share those, we would find in some cases some things that we also already know. But then we would also be given the gift of some things that we're not doing right now.
Yeah.
So that the more that we could explore that, the more there could be more possibilities. I think for me, one of the things that we did in the course of the last 3 years that I've been here, we had an opportunity for people to speak into what is it that we need to be doing in the future? And I think this is in preparation for some conversations we were going to have with Pastor Nancy. Nancy Nyland. And so we did some surveys and we went through some answerings and we tried to get people in groups and people feed into that. And, you know, one of the things that, that we know was coming from a number of the Africans was what our worship experience was looking like. And they say this, I think, with a great deal of love and concern. They say, well, you know, we think that things are a little boring and dead, you know, that sort of thing. So, so you know, this is what we would like to see. We'd like to see this, that, and the other. And so even before having made any decisions on that, I really helped the congregation to do some of those things, like having a time where people would come to the altar for prayer and for the laying on of hands, that kind of physical and emotional response to the word that has been preached, because that's what they did in other contexts in their various settings before they came here. And so in that sense, they were talking about those things that we missed. And so those are the kinds of things. And then I think there are, well, we're not large enough. Well, I don't know, I can't say that, but I was about to speak about youth ministry and that opportunity. In my conversations with the youth, some of the youth, and they were talking about how some other congregations in the area are doing youth ministry and they get together and they do some things together. Minister Marley really took them out at various places to larger Lutheran youth gatherings, I think, probably in the synod level. And they experienced some things, and I think they would like to do that again.
No, during his short tenure here, it was not any ELCA events that he was involved in. I think when I showed you in the hallway here,
yes,
where he would do the fresh, is what the acronym that he used for the an all day workshop sort of, where they spent the first half of the day or the second half of the day going to the zoo or going to the children's museum and then the other half and study.
Yeah, right. So yeah, those are, I think, some of the things I think are before us. But you know, with COVID, it's becomes larger than that, I think, right now. So I think we're just at a point of struggling to see what that's going to look like
Right.
in the future.
Because when he brought up laying on of hands and that kind of closeness is what we're missing now.
Yeah, all of us. That is a universal issue right now, I think. Just that lack of, you know, being able to give a handshake or a hug when you pass the peace and
passing the peace, what's that?
Exactly.
You know, yeah. So, but really, and the idea of, I mean, everybody, I think all Christians, I think, who ever sang together, not being able to do that is, you know, people would feel that as robbery. And so all of us, I think, right now are being robbed of that. And however, I guess right now, I'm trying to think through certainly about ways in which we could have music and people can sort of like place themselves in that while others are doing it for them. And that's what we're missing right now.
Yeah.
It happens that in our case, in terms of the musicians, they are all, except for one, are sort of on the elderly side. So that means that their ability to come and be a part of something outdoors, I think, might be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
So, you know, one had a baby, and then the other two, then we have two elderly persons who have been playing with us. So that might be a challenge as we look at the future. But we're looking for various ways of trying to get this done.
Now, last Tuesday evening, we attended the ordination at a new joy up in Westfield, and I thought it was interesting when Pastor Duckworth started the service telling people, if you're at home, sing as loud as you want.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually did watch from home, so
Okay.
I was
Oh, okay.
virtually.
Oh, okay.
I
All right.
didn't realize that Will came from Salem though until I saw that on your website or
He's got a
Facebook,
connection,
maybe.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. We baptized the baby here. That's what it was. So
Ah,
little Liam was
Liam.
baptized here. So
Okay.
he, out of that family, he really is a quote unquote member of Salem Shalom. So, but his
That's
daddy
great.
and his mama, they just like to come. And so, in fact, Wendy was telling me, she says, I miss coming to Salem. I miss coming to Salem. So,
And they consider it to be part of us because we receive their tithing.
that's right. That's true. So they really are a part. Yeah. Yeah. Being able to sing together, I think is, I think Luther or somebody said, if you pray and you sing, you've prayed twice.
Right.
So we're kind of missing that opportunity, and we're going to struggle with everybody else to try to get this done. Our choir right now really is really one family. So as I think about it, this is not going to be hard. Because they are basically one family, I think I'll be able to do some other things, even though I'm going to be missing two of the elders in that group. But I'll.
Have you heard of
Did
the
we lose him?
acapella?
Are you there?
He's frozen a bit. Can you hear us, Pastor Capers?
Yes.
Okay, you froze on our screens for a minute there.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay.
But there's
Oh,
there's an
I
app
just saw a
called
message that
Acapella.
said that the internet was unstable.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
That's
a
what that
there's a phone app called Acapella that allows you to record your own voice and then send it to someone and they can add their voice to yours.
Oh, okay.
So that might be a tool to explore.
Thanks for that. Okay. Now, could you think that could be used in if we wanted to tape that and then send it up as a part of our streaming?
Yeah, it doesn't give. I'm not sure if it does video. It may only be the audio piece of it.
Oh, audio? Okay. All right. Okay. And it's called Acapella.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate both of you spending this time with me this afternoon, and it's just been fascinating to hear your stories, and I am planning to write a little something for this week's e-news and maybe include some video clips too. So I will would you like to see that before it goes out? Or,
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I was going to even suggest that if there are any other questions or things that come up, or please contact us and
okay.
ask some follow-ups that maybe we didn't answer, and we would be glad to.
Okay.
Whatever.
If there's any-
Hopefully maybe that can be a piece of increasing those streaming numbers too, as
Could be.
people read about your ministry.
Yeah.
So,
And if you need any images, let me know and
okay.
we can supply you with the
DeVoe's
original
got
images.
pictures.
All right.
But you can pull them off the Facebook and so
Okay.
at that resolution. So since
Sounds
you're
good.
dealing in a electronic communication, it's not like print where the resolution has to be higher than
Right.
Mm.
Okay. So thank you so much. And I will, I've been trying to get the e-news out on Thursday mornings, so I'll get something to you on Wednesday
Okay.
for you to review.
All right, certainly. Be looking forward to it and see what you come up with. And like I said, whatever way we can help further, it'd be
All right. Thank
good
you
to
so
hear from
much.
Thank you.
you. Well, thank you.